rising up in the clouds, but I've always felt that something's missing. That was until I found you right there in the crowd. You came into my life and started a fire. You made me feel like I could touch the sky. Oh, there's nothing missing now that you're my desire. Now all I have to do is to make you mine. 'Cause I know, and you know what we could be. Like a song, like a perfect melody. Baby, don't say you don't believe in me. 'Cause you know, and I know, we're onto something good. You know, and I know, we got something good.
Well, listen, this is the episode of all episodes. We're doing something different today. Welcome to the village. I'm your host, Kim Jordan, and I am super excited. I can't even contain myself. I was over here jamming to my theme music. Y'all know how I do. But I am going to allow you to get something to drink, get your tea, get your coffee, whatever it is, water. I don't really drink a whole lot of water, but you do you. And then I want you to like, share, and comment. I need a lot of comments in the comment section, because this is a conversation that I don't think anyone has hosted or done, because there's always a lot of back and forth. But we have two individuals that have agreed to come on, share their perspectives about believing and non-believing, and we are going to deep dive. So, without any further delay, I want to first introduce my dear friend, Jamie Powers. And then secondly, I want to introduce my dear friend from South Africa, Brandon Bailey. Come on, village, show them some love. They will be coming onto the screen very soon. I'm not sure. Okay, well, somebody's coming. There's Brandon. Thank you so much for joining. I can't hear you, sir.
Hey, Kim, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be with you on the show, on the platform this evening. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. And I'm not sure where my friend Jamie Powers is, but I can introduce her again. Look at me. I was thinking, Jamie, I said, well, maybe she needs some music or something.
Yeah, I've been on a couple times now. I think I should get my own intro.
Exactly.
Thanks for having me back.
You're more than welcome. So we are going to go ahead and start deep diving. And I just want to ask this question of both of you. And Jamie, you can go first. Why do you think it's important for people of different beliefs to have conversations like this?
Well, everybody has their own perspective. So I think it's important that everybody gets out their own perspective and their own belief. And so that everybody, each person can understand and kind of get to know all the perspectives out there. And so that everybody can try to have an open mind and not just be one-sided or closed-minded. And with all the craziness in the world today, it's important for everybody to try to have an open mind and get to know people of different thoughts, different beliefs, different backgrounds, different ethnicities, and all of that, and not just be in your own little bubble all the time.
Brandon, the same question to you. Why do you think it's important for people of different beliefs to have have conversations like this?
Well, first and foremost, I do think that people are relational by nature, and God made us relational beings. And people are relational. At some stage, they need to have a conversation and also understand, what makes the person. And so that is of absolute necessity, because we tend to live in our own silos, and we tend to live with some assumptions of one another. But when you begin to close the distance, all those assumptions fade away, and you realize that your preconceived notions or ideas of people might have been flawed. So I think these type of conversations is not just so that we can persuade people about our beliefs, but so that we can also get to hear people as to who they are and where they come from. So if you're going to have this conversation and your only objective is to be persuasive of your beliefs, you have already failed. So I think the idea at the end of the day is, because we are relational beings, we should connect with people on some level to hear them, not to persuade them. And that is always a safe foundation for this type of dialogue at the end of the day.
You both may have answered this question, but I think there's some more details that I'm looking for. Jamie, why did you agree to this conversation, and what do you hope people will take away from your contribution?
I'm not really sure why I agreed to it, honestly. I think what I hope people take away is I feel like there's a negative connotation to non-believers, like atheists. That's just such a negative word. I don't like to call myself an atheist just because it sounds so bad, just right off the bat. But I guess, if you're being technical, I guess that's what I am. But I just want people to take away that non-believer, atheist, whatever you want to call me, that we are people too, and we're still good people, and we still believe in some of the same beliefs that believers have. We believe in right and wrong. We believe in, thou shalt not kill, and we don't steal, we don't kill, we still are good people, and I just want people to take that away, that we still are good people, and we still believe in a lot of the same things that believers do. We just don't go to church, and we might not believe in God, but we still are good people.
Okay. And so, Brandon, that same question, why did you agree to this conversation? And what do you hope people will take away from your contribution?
I agreed because you asked me and you were so persuasive, and I said, okay, you're so persuasive, let me just be. But jokes aside, I think I agreed because I genuinely want to hear the other side as well. And, Jamie highlighted something so beautiful. She said that, what, we are people at the end of the day. We also have certain beliefs. And I think one of the reasons why there's so much tit for tat and fighting between people of different beliefs is because a lot of these beliefs are unpacked in the arena of intellectualism. And anytime you go to the intellectual part, you are bound for a fight. But if we can take it away from intellectualism and engage one another as people, we make so many discoveries. And again, I like what Jamie said. Jamie said that we don't believe, don't kill, don't steal, and those things. And it makes me actually realize that sometimes we generally have the same beliefs, but we want to give it a different umbrella. And so Paul comes into a certain city and he says, man, you guys are worshiping the unknown God, but let me tell you what, the unknown God is actually my God, And so these type of conversations makes us realize how similar we are. But if we keep that distance, we will never discover how similar we are. And we will also realize that we are always on the defense, when really, we can let go of certain things and realize we're actually the same,
Very good, very good. Thank you both for setting that precedence. So, Brandon, do you think people talk to God more during the pandemic when it first hit, and and what about now? Like, how do you feel that trend, that may have happened in people's relationships?
Look, I genuinely think that when we're in a season where there's so much fear and so much drama, everybody calls on the name of God. I just genuinely believe that, and I do think that a pandemic has probably heightened us spiritually at some level, because we have to reconcile the fact that we are mortal beings and we're going to die at some stage. And anybody, no matter what your beliefs are, when you know that you are closer to death, there's certain conversations you have with yourself, not necessarily with everybody, but you have certain conversations with yourself, and you constantly find yourself in a place where you are reconciling your beliefs with what comes next, And so when we are faced with mortality and how mortality works, I promise you there's a conversation that goes on in your head. Now, the challenge with us as people is generally the conversations in our head are not consistent with the conversations we have in the corridors of power, And it's so interesting what we say now, Ed, and what we say publicly. And this is one of the things that I've realized over the course of time. I mean, even before I became born again. And again, you know, it wasn't a hatred for the faith or anything. I was just not born again. I was just not a born again Christian, you know. But there were moments and events that transpire, and you start asking yourself very, very complex questions. You don't always have the answers for them, but you flip those conversations in your head. So to come back to your questions, I definitely think that this season made us ask God a lot of questions. You lose a loved one, you have questions at the end of the day. Somebody close to you died, you have questions. And those things make us have questions with God in our head, not necessarily in the public space. So yes, there's been a lot more of conversations happening at this stage in the journey. And as I say, they might not be in the public space, but there's definitely ongoing dialogue in our head.
So basically, you're saying that, especially when the pandemic started, you know, people were having conversations, but now that things seem to be a little bit more relaxed and people are back out there, do you think people are still having these conversations?
Look, I think it's something that will consistently haunt you. I just think it's more amplified based on how what seasons we are in. So certain seasons amplify the conversations, other seasons downtone the conversations, but those conversations are ongoing. It's just that certain season amplifies it and others just tone it down a bit. But that conversation is ongoing. And I believe that, you know, there's no denying that we have those conversations in our head.
Okay. And so, Jamie, the same question. Do you think people talk to God more when the pandemic first hit? And what about now?
I agree with Brandon. I believe they do because, like Brandon said, you know, when you're faced with death, I mean, obviously we're all going to die someday, you know, but when it's more in your face because of something like the pandemic, yes, it makes people, you know, especially people who do believe in God and talk to God. I feel like it does make them want to have that conversation more because it's more of a you know, reality and possibility that maybe your death is coming sooner rather than later, you know. So yes, I do feel like people talk to God more often, or you know, or well, yes, I guess a lot more often than they did before.
And so do you think like even people that are in the under the unbeliever umbrella were having these conversations as well? I mean, let me just make it more personal. When the pandemic hit, did you have these conversations?
No.
Okay. Right.
Sorry, I was muted. I don't believe in God. I believe, you know, what goes around comes around, and I'm not sure that I would say I believe in a higher power. But I do believe that you are held accountable for your actions. If you want to call that God, or if you want to call that a higher power, I don't know what you want to call it, but I do believe at some point you're going to be held accountable for your actions. Hence, you need to be a good person. But do I have a conversation with a person, a higher power? No, I don't. But you know, does death, you know, like being afraid of death? No, I'm not afraid of death. And so the reality of death, like, you know, being in a pandemic, no, that it doesn't frighten me more, because whether it's a pandemic, whether it's a car accident, whether it's, you know, a heart attack, it'll come when it comes, and when it's your time, it's your time. So why be afraid of it? It'll happen when it's supposed to happen. So no, I didn't talk to anybody just because of the pandemic.
Okay. Thank you. And so, Brandon, was there a time that you were not a believer in God, and what happened that made you start to believe?
Well, for me personally, I think when you say there was a time I did not believe in God, uh, growing up for us has primarily been you go the direction of your parents, basically, as a child. That is how you were raised. But of course, later on, you make certain discoveries for yourself. So when I was not a believer, I was still a teenager then. And I think a lot of that was not a hate for God, not a hate for church, not a hate for religion. It was just not a priority. And I think I must make that distinction, because there are two type of unbelievers for me. They are the unbelievers that hates God and hates the existence that there is even a concept as God. And then there are people that just have a different set of priorities at any particular stage in their journey. And so for me, it was not necessarily a hatred towards faith or religion per se. It was just that it was not a priority for me at that point in my journey. But of course, later on, it became a priority. And when you prioritize something, certain things unlock, certain things unfold. There are certain things that you begin to see because you have now made a decision to prioritize something. And what I believe is that you never discover something until it becomes a priority. Did you get me? And so it was not a priority. And that is why I was an unbeliever. But when it became a priority and interest began to develop, I began to look at it in a deeper way. And I think somewhere in my early 20s, I had an encounter with God. And I think that just set in motion the journey of my faith and where I am today. But all along, it was just playing church, playing a little bit here, playing a little bit there, but nothing concrete. It was not until in my early 20s where I had my own encounter at the end of the day. And again, what I believe generally when it comes to belief systems or a set of beliefs, I don't think our struggle is belief. I think our struggle is who do we credit for our beliefs. You get what I'm saying? I genuinely think everybody believes in something. The struggle is not belief. The struggle is not belief because everybody believes. The struggle is who do I credit for it? And so you would find somebody that had a terrible experience in life. And that experience is so bad that you don't want to credit the idea of a God. But at the end of the day, you are still crediting someone, be that yourself, be that life, you are still crediting someone. So it's not belief that we wrestle with, it's who gets the credit for belief that we wrestle with. And so when I was not a Christian, who was getting the credit for my beliefs, But when I became a Christian, that I was crediting somebody else for their beliefs, and that became God. So generally, when we speak about different sets of beliefs, I always tell people this: it's impossible to walk in the earth and believe absolutely nothing. It's who gets the credit for belief. So our argument should not even be what you believe. Our argument really is who gets the credit for your beliefs, and that really is where the genuine struggle of belief exists. And so for me, I eventually became a believer in God. And that is probably the difference for me.
Okay, so before I ask Jamie the same question in a different way, I wanted to see if, Jamie, did you have any feedback about what Brandon just said? Because that was a lot.
No, I mean, I understand what he's saying, and it makes sense. For me, I assume you're going to ask me the same question.
Well, okay, so let me just go ahead and get that in there. So,
Okay.
Was there a time that you were a believer? Coming up, and your mom or what have you. Was there a time when you were a believer, and what happened that you stopped believing?
I don't know that I was necessarily a believer, but like Brandon, what changed what kind of set it for me, to how I am now I was also in my early 20s. But I did go to church occasionally growing up. My mom did take us to church, and very early, until I was about 4 or 5, my grandmother did also. So, before my early 20s, I didn't really have a strong opinion one way or another. I went to church when I was told to, and it just was what it was. But then in my early 20s, it was actually during September 2011. And it wasn't just because of the Twin Towers situation, but it did help. But it just happened to be during the same month. My daughter was 9 months old, and there was a story in the news about a 9-month-old baby girl. And long story short, the 9-month-old baby girl was raped and left for dead. And when they found the 9-month-old baby girl, she was covered from head to toe in mosquito bites, and she was barely alive, but she was alive. And so the 9-month-old baby girl will be scarred for the rest of her life, and she will never have children because somebody raped her. And I don't even know how it's physically possible, but it happened. And my baby girl was the same age at the time. And 9/11 had happened. So, you know, and I still get emotional thinking about it to this day. And it was almost 20 years ago. And just thinking about all that evil at the time, I just couldn't fathom, and I still can't understand if there is a God, and you still hear stories throughout the news about, I mean, adults, I mean, not that adults deserve evil. I'm not by any means saying that, but children, I just don't understand how, if there is a God, how God can allow such evil to happen to innocent children. And I just have such a struggle with that I just can't bring myself to believe in someone that allows that to happen. So that is what just broke it for me, that I cannot say that I believe in somebody that allows that to happen.
Yeah.
Brandon?
Can I weigh in on it? First and foremost, let me say that is absolutely horrible. You know, just hearing that story. And in South Africa, we pick up the newspaper and we read those type of stories daily. And I feel you. I totally identify with you as far as that is concerned, because we call it gender-based violence and violence against children this side in South Africa. And trust me, I feel you when you say that. It absolutely grates my skin, you know. And I always tell the guys, I imagine how I would act if I come across such a scene. But here's the thing that I also want to say with that. If God does not allow people to make choices, then God cannot claim that he has created mankind, because then he can just only lay claim to the fact that he has created robots. And so if he controls every decision I make, then I can no longer call myself a human being, because then I'm just a robot in that particular context. So if I want to do good, it's because God coerced me into that. If I want to be evil, God stops me from doing that. And I think that would take away from us the human expression in the earth. And so one of the things that I had become more comfortable with in a world filled with so much evil is that God gave man the power of choice. And you mentioned something earlier, Jamie. You said something that stayed with me in your opening address. You said that you believe that life has a way of bringing stuff back to you, you know? And I absolutely believe that. And I believe that unless somebody finds a space where they actually take responsibility for their actions and say, you know what, in this moment, I made a terrible mistake. I don't know what came over me. I made a stupid mistake, and take responsibility. They'll pay a price for that. I absolutely believe that. But I also believe that it is wise of God not to influence people's decisions, because if he influences our decisions and coerces us into decisions, then we cannot say that people have a free will, because then free will is a myth. I mean, we sitting here today, you have a set of beliefs, you choose that. I have a set of beliefs, I chose that. Now imagine if God takes that away from me, then that would make him more evil than the evil that we cry about every day. And so what I've genuinely began to exercise in my life was this principle, and we teach it so strong even in our local church, is that people are people. They are good, they are wicked, they are evil. And you meet all sorts of people on the face of the earth. In Africa, for example, you go up into West Africa, Central Africa, East Africa, and you find that there's child soldiers in those regions. That means one man woke up one day and he said he's going to take over the country, took 10-year-old boys into the bush and trained them out to be soldiers. I mean, that's just a high level of evil right there. But if God takes that man's choice away from him, then that makes God by default evil, because it did not allow somebody to choose his own path. And that is what makes the faith for me so profound, is that God exists but He leaves you to make that choice. And so what I've learned is that the good and the bad that happens in life, I credit that to the decision of man. I credit that to the decision of man, and you are going to pay a price for that. I remember, I think 5 years ago, my daughter was in hospital. My daughter was an old story, and I'm not going to get into all of the detail of that. My daughter was born, and she was in hospital for about 6 weeks. And it was a terrible season for us because she was fighting for her life. And going to the hospital every day was so depressing, so frustrating for me, because I'm sitting there, I'm thinking to myself, I'm a preacher, I pray for other people's children, and something happens, but my child is dying. My child is dying here. And that was extremely, extremely frustrating. I cannot even uh, count all the times Marilyn and I would just sit, Marilyn, my wife, we would just sit in the car and just cry. We would just weep, because you come into the hospital one day and the doctor says there's improvement. You come into the hospital the next day and the doctor says, no, she's worse. And it was just such an emotional roller coaster for me. And to be frank with you, at that point in time, I questioned my beliefs. I sat there and I questioned it. I said, you know what? Why do I even believe in healing? Why do I even preach the gospel? Why am I even running a church? Why did I even say yes to the call of God? And again, in that moment, I realized one fundamental principle is that if God does not allow me to go through the same things that an atheist go through, then that makes him unjust. Then that means God is unfair. And so God's fairness is reflective in how each of us experience a measure of good and evil. So if I'm a Christian and I only experience good, then you have all the right to say your God is wicked. But if he gives me the measure of good and evil the same way he gives it to somebody that thinks he does not exist, that then justifies the fact that he is just and he is fair. And so when we begin to look at life and we see good and evil cohabitate or coexist, it is really a reflection of the fairness of God, because if Christians only have good and never have bad, who wants to serve that God? But if we all have an equal measure of good, bad, ugly, and evil, it's also a reflection then on a just God that gave all of us a level playing field and dished out to us accordingly. And so the Bible puts it this way. It says it rains on the just and the unjust. That then again to me is reflective of how just the God that I serve is. The example I give the guys in church, I say to them, if Logan's son comes to my house and he visits my house and he's playing with Tristan, he's playing with my son in the yard, and Logan's son, both of them decide to take the ball and kick it through the window. And Brandon runs out and Brandon gives Logan's son a beating of his life, but he does not beat up his own son. Everybody's going to look at Brandon and say, what an unfair person this is. But if Brandon gives both of them the same measure, you're going to say, wow, that is justice right there. So sometimes the equal distribution of good and evil is a reflection of God's justice at the end of the day. And that to me makes me believe him even more. Because now I realize that we all walk the same path irrespective of our beliefs. And this is why there's a lot of Christian beliefs that I don't even subscribe to at times, that I think is foolishness at best, and trying to justify things that cannot be justified. So for me, as far as that is concerned, we must make a separation between the action of man, the sovereignty of God, the free will of man. And if we can look at that as separate conversations, then we might get to a place where we give God a little bit more credit. That's just my 2 cents on that. So again, we all go through these crazy life experiences. And as I said to you, the one with my daughter was perhaps the most painful experience for me. I'll never forget that experience, never. For as long as I live, I said to the guys in church, you guys are probably bored out of your skin to hear me speak about this. And then my eyes become teary when I speak about it, because it's your child, man. It's your own child laying there. It's not nobody's child. It's your child. And then, of course, with one of my boys in the church, they lost their baby. And I was present on the scene when they lost their baby. It was a bitter experience for me personally, because I was present with them when that episode happened. And it was a bitter experience for me, but I realized this is where the scripture says, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. It is not a good in the earth that justifies God. It is the fact that good and evil exist and they come in equal measure that justifies God.
That's a fair point.
Thank you.
Okay. So I was going to ask you, Jamie, did you have anything that you wanted to follow up with that?
No, I think it's a fair point, and it makes sense what Brandon said. And sorry to hear
Yeah.
about your daughter.
Right. And to what both of you said, with me personally, I was a new Christian. I mean, I probably hadn't been a Christian for 6 months. And my 16-year-old brother was killed by a drunk driver.
Hmm.
I couldn't process it. Like I totally felt like this is not working for me. I couldn't process it. I didn't understand it. In my mind, I kept thinking that people told me that everyone will have an opportunity to accept Christ before they die. And I knew the environment that he grew up in. I don't think he's ever set foot in a church. So I'm like, well, where was his chance? And I literally was in a very dark and deep place that it took people that, clearly cared for who I was and my, I would say, spiritual and mental state, because mentally I was done. I was a basket case. And then spiritually, I was just like floating somewhere. I had no foundation because, again, I was new to the whole Christian world. So I'm like, well, this ain't working for me. So, I know more about living in the world, getting high, partying, and going to the club than I know about this. So, I can go back to what was working for me because that worked. I don't know about y'all. It worked for me when I was out there. So, and I had a good time. So it really wasn't, it was really challenging for me. And so what ended up happening was I had to look at it from different perspectives, and I still struggle sometimes, today, honestly, but I had to look at it from as a parent, because they always say, well, God is your heavenly father. Okay. So, let me play with that a little bit. If he's my heavenly father, and as a father, because both of you have children, you know that your children may not always make the decisions that you agree with. And your children may not do the stuff that you say for them to do on a regular basis. And there's, consequences to that. And I'm not saying his death is a consequence. Don't get me wrong. But that's kind of where I was at, how it made me to be able to come to grips with what happened to Jermaine. Because I'm just saying, it was tough, y'all. It was tough. And I did not want to keep going forward in a environment that would allow my 16-year-old, inner city living. And for those in, South Africa and around the world, inner city is like, the hood. So, in the hood, you live differently. You got different priorities. So in the hood, it's different. I'm just saying, so, he had a different kind of life. He had different parents, including my daddy. So, I'm just saying it was different experience for him. And at 16, like, he didn't understand how to make that decision for himself. So I struggled with the fact that now he's gone and he doesn't have an opportunity to, have that lifestyle. So trust me, I get it. And I think at the end of the day, like Brandon said, I think we all have a story, and we, and there's defining stories, and some of us have multiple. I mean, it ain't about me today, but I could have shared 2 or 3 more stories.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get to be 54 and don't have stories. That's what I'm saying. So, I got some. But, I think that, back to, well, how did you say it, Brandon? It's what, it's who you, it's what you believe. Wait, it's not what you believe. It's your, tell me again. Cause
I said all of us have a belief system. We don't struggle with belief. We struggle with who gets the credit for what we believe. And that is where we start having so many different references of God, of a entity, of a being, whichever way you want to put it. So nobody struggles with belief. We struggle with who gets the credit for our belief. And that creates multiple dynamics that we choose to credit for our beliefs.
got it. That right there, like, was monumental. I'm definitely going to have to pin that and make a little post about that for sure. Okay, so let's turn the corner a little bit and have some serious, some lighter questions. So Jamie,
when you said serious, I thought like we're not serious,
right?
No,
that's what I thought.
Questions, yeah.
What next after that? Woo!
Right. So Jamie, overall, what is your experience when you meet people that are Christians?
I mean, I don't think it's any different. I take people for who they are. I take them at face value. So, it doesn't matter to me if they're Christian, if they're Catholic, if they're Baptist, if they're Protestant, if they're atheist. It doesn't matter to me. People are people. I don't. It doesn't matter. You are who you are, and as long as you are the person you say you are, and you're not fake, I take you at who you are, regardless of what you say you are. As long as you live up to what you say you are, that's all that matters to me.
Well, I must have made the cut.
You're doing good.
Thank you. Thank you. And so, Brandon, what is your experience when it comes to meeting people that are non-Christian?
Well, let me start off by saying to you, I think for me, the first connecting point is based on the personality. Before I even get to what you believe, what your religious persuasions are, I like to connect with you on a person-to-person level. And so it's very seldom that you would be in my conversation for 5 minutes and I'm already preaching to you, because that's not the objective for meeting people. I want to know who you are, and my choices as to who I make friends or who I hang with is primarily based on personality types. I mean, I can tell you I have a host of Christians that are not my friends, and even though we have the same beliefs, our personalities are a bit different. We differ in certain areas, and you'll find that in other cases, I have a lot of friends that are not necessarily Christian, because relationships and meeting people is driven by personality types more than what it is driven by a set of beliefs. Because if it's driven by a set of beliefs, then we already have preconceived ideas of everybody. That means that if you told me that Jamie is a non-believer, without even me stretching out the hand to meet her, I would have had a preconceived idea of Jamie already. And again, that is the danger for most of us as Christians, because we meet people with preconceived ideas of who they are, and we don't ever get somebody a chance to prove themselves to us. And so for me, it's personality type at the end of the day. So a Christian can be a turn off just as much as a non-believer can be a turn off. And again, that is personality types. Imagine somebody's being rude, but he says, but we both love Jesus, I mean, that,
I agree 100%.
That's just a level of foolishness. That's just a turn off. I mean, you insult me and then you justify it with, but we both love Jesus, my friend. We don't play that game, So I think at the end of the day, there must be a level of maturity where we relate better as people without having some religious thing that unifies us at the end of the day. I'm not looking for religious unity. I'm looking for a friend. And that is important for me.
Yes. I 100% agree.
I totally agree. Because what I will say, yes, I have a lot of friends, and I've met people across, the USA, and I have friends, across the globe, clearly. However, in Florida, Jamie is, my mom has already claimed her as her daughter. So let's just, You know, she's in the family. She's
Yep.
at every event. We're at every event at her, you know, so.
Well, look, the first time Jamie and I met, man, I think we just clicked. The PC was loud, and my wife said, "Who's that lady speaking there?" I said, "Well, she's a non-believer, you know." And my wife said, "But she sounds cool, man." I said, "Yep, she comes across as easy, you know." So again, you know, it comes down to what I'm saying to you. Religious belief should not be a prerequisite for friendship. There should be other things way above that connects us at the end of the day. And again, that is what Jesus presented at the end of the day. Jesus would never come into a room and his first conversation is deep religious. You understand? Most of the time he went that direction because people were pushing him in that direction, you know. But this guy could just hang out and just chill with people, and his personality, his person preached more than what was in here. You understand? And I believe that should be how we connect at the end of the day, because nobody loves a Bible basher. I mean, for me, that was a turn off with Christians back in the day, you know. Even now, it's a turn off for me because most of the people know I'm in ministry. And so they know you're coming to a certain event and already they're telling you, "Oh, man of God, we're looking forward to a impartation." And I'm thinking, dude, we coming for meat. We're coming to sit and eat. What impartation are you talking about, you know? And the point is that people always have this religious expectation and they can turn nice gatherings into that type of thing. And that is a major, major, major turn off. Let me ask you this question, Jamie. Have you ever been at just a family gathering and out of nowhere, the whole conversation turns into religion? Is that just not a turn off for the family gathering? It just spoils everything at the table. It just creates so much tension. We came for a good time. Now you're putting me on the spot. It's a turn off at the end of the day. And so I'm saying, be a friend before you're a preacher to people. That's the most important thing.
Yeah. I mean, I would have to say in my family,
Amen.
no, but not where it turns into a religious conversation. But I know what you're saying, where yes, you go for a gathering and it turns it, whether it be, I mean, it could turn into political. It doesn't even have to be religion. It can turn into political, and nobody wants that. Like you came to just chill and hang out with friends and family and, like you said, eat, and now all of a sudden everybody's all up in the uproar because we're you know, talking about politics or religion or race or whatever. And that's not what I came for. I just wanted to hang out with y'all. And now everybody's leaving because everybody's fighting. And yeah, so yeah,
Yep.
I'm not about that.
I just wanted some chicken and some macaroni and cheese.
Right.
That's all
I
I
just wanted some barbecue. You know, I gotta have my meat, so I just wanted some ribs. You know.
That's it. Okay, so Jamie, I'm going to start with you with this question. Do you think people with different beliefs can be married? And please explain your answer.
I think you can, as long as, kind of to Brandon's point, as long as you're not like a Bible basher or on the opposite end, like a God hater, you know, like from my perspective, I'm not like a God hater. I just, you know, I am who I am. You are who you are. You know, I'm okay with that. If you have a different belief, okay. If you want to go to church, okay. Just don't force me to go. You know, be okay with the fact that I don't want to go. And I'm okay with the fact that you want to go. And if I maybe happen to go with you one day, okay, just don't expect me to go every time. You know, so I think as long as people are completely open-minded and as long as they love each other enough, yes, I think that they can believe in different things and be in a relationship. But if you're like way far on one end of the spectrum and somebody else is the other end, I think you'll probably have problems. But if you can, you know, just come in the middle and be okay with the fact that you have different beliefs and you love each other enough, then yes, I think you can work it out.
Okay, Brandon. And so I'm going to go with the same question for you. Do you think people with different beliefs can be married? And please explain your answer.
I think they can be married, but I think it will be extremely complicated. I think it will be extremely, extremely complicated because the truth is, whether we want to accept it or not, somewhere in any relationship, these type of things surface. And when there's tension, it will genuinely surface, and that creates so much tension in the long run for couples, that you find that they go their separate ways. I mean, I'm a pastor. We've married people that have different beliefs, and you realize in that counseling session already, we are on two different wavelengths here. We're not catching the same frequency, and you try and point that out for them, and they adamant on getting married, and years down the line, you now have to counsel the same couple because they're getting a divorce, and I do think that beliefs at some stage manifest. First it's small, but then it grows bigger and bigger and bigger, and it creates such an unhealthy tension in the relationship that people pull in separate ways. And because at the end of the day, beliefs inform values. Beliefs informs a value system, and any family tries to build certain values into that family component, and there will somehow be a conflict of interest when we start going in that direction. And so what I normally say to people, even before they get married, I say, look, you can get married to who you love, but I can tell you now, you guys believe differently. And again, not just religious beliefs. I mean, sometimes they have different beliefs in terms of economics, local household economics. They have different beliefs as far as that is concerned. They have different beliefs as far as their social life is concerned. And those type of things create so much tension down the line that you find that people inevitably separate. And that has been one of the saddest things for me to preside over, because initially they come to you, they want to get married, and you go through that whole journey with them. And you tell them up front, look, I know you love each other, but love will not be enough down the line, and you make it clear to them, you make it plain. And then a few years later, you have to now counsel them out of marriage when you were also responsible for counseling them into marriage. And I think for me personally, based on what I have observed and personally handled, it makes it a bit scary for me, that reality at the end of the day, because I don't think all of us have the maturity to see that process through at the end of the day. And then, of course, you have extended families that weigh in on that marriage. You have kids that become a part of that marriage. Which direction do we choose to go? Because mommy is pulling this direction, daddy is pulling this direction. So where are we headed? And those type of things, unfortunately, just nurtures confusion in the next generation, and that just creates a perpetual cycle of confusion somewhere down the line. So I think they can be married, but it will be extremely difficult, and that is my belief as far as that is concerned. Just mute yourself.
Both great responses. Again, there's no wrong answer, because we're here talking about perspectives. I just want to make a observation and get feedback from both of you. As a Christian, and I find that people that are Christians seem to only be able to, well, I'm not going to say people that are Christians, people that I've encountered. Okay, so this is not a blanket, and all y'all, all of us, but people sometimes step into religion. And so I feel like in situations like this, you're not approaching it with a sense of understanding and getting to know Jamie. It's more of, trying to, I don't know if it's, I'm not even right understanding trying to figure out how I want to say this, but it's not like you're here to understand who Jamie is as a person and understand it from a non-believer's perspective, which is the title of the show. I think sometimes we approach it as, if I ask this question, maybe we'll get this response. Or if I pick, get right here, then I'll have that response. And so that's from the Christian, the religious side. But then from a non-believer side, they will approach this conversation. And I'm just having outside, because I know that there's always going to be this type of viewer. And I don't have that now, but there's always going to be. So from a non-believer side, they probably would want to be able to text Jamie and say, well, ask Brandon this, and everybody's like still, poking and prying and trying to get their point versus in embracing the fact that this is unheard of. This is unprecedented, where you have two people with two perspectives being able to come together and share and be respectful. So, Jamie, what's your feedback based on what I just shared? It's a lot, but come on.
Well, at the end of the day, like I think I've said before, I think people just need to be okay with the fact that you have your belief, I have my belief, and that's okay. We're all our own person. We're not robots, like Brandon mentioned. We do have free will, and I'm okay with the fact that I believe what I believe and you guys believe what you believe. And even between the two of you, I'm sure you don't believe everything exactly the same, and that's okay. And one of the things I also struggle with as far as religion goes is that there's so many different types of religions. There's Christian, there's Catholicism, there's baptism or Baptist, there's Protestant, and the list goes on. And it's, to me, that's something, like I said, I struggle with that. If there's God, then why does all these different types keep breaking off? Just because you don't agree with one thing, now you break off and create your own religion. That's just like, I don't know, that just boggles my mind. So, but again, I understand that we all believe our own thing, and so whatever, that's different conversation. But I'm okay with that. I'm okay with everybody, believing everything. So yes, I would have questions for a believer, and things that I would probably continue to ask, but again, that's a longer, conversation. But at the end of the day, I'm not trying to like keep poking a bear, but it's still questions that I always have, but it's not, I'm not trying to like, I would never try to turn anybody to be a non-believer. It's just, it would be for me to try to understand like where you're coming from, and Brandon, when I say something and Brandon has a response, he makes very good points. And so I'm like, okay, at the end of the day, I still don't think it's going to change my point of view, but I'm open to understand where he's coming from, and accept that he does have a very valid response. And I'm okay with that, So I think, like I said, people just need to be open-minded and just not have the attitude that they just want to keep poking. Just ask a question, like Brandon said before, in a respectful manner so that you can understand and come at it from that point of view. Ask questions to understand, not to be disrespectful and just continue to poke at somebody.
Yeah.
Brandon?
Well, I think the mistake we make, to come back to the point you raised earlier, Kim, is that we have turned religious debates into entertainment, and that makes it so difficult for us to actually have dialogue. So I mean, even the show tonight, so many people will come onto the show with the expectation that I'm going to show Jamie a thing or two, and vice versa. I mean, some would think that Jamie's going to show this preacher a thing or two, and unfortunately, we have turned it into entertainment. And what entertainment does is entertainment makes us more defensive and more proud. And what do I mean by that? If I know you have come to put me on the spot here, you reinforce my pride in my beliefs. You reinforce my pride. So now, even though I know that Jamie is 100% correct, the approach, because it's entertainment, it reinforces my religious pride. And so it's easy for me to say, well, you're 100% correct, but I believe what I believe, because we have turned it into something that's entertaining at the end of the day. And the moment we turn this type of dialogue into entertainment, we we literally reinforce flawed beliefs. We literally push people back into a little corner where they don't want to have anything to do with it because we turn it into entertainment. My thing, as far as salvation is concerned, is that should always be private and personal. So my objective has never been to prove to Christians how smart we are. Because if I want to prove to Christians how smart we are, then I've already failed in the blueprint that Jesus laid down for us. You understand what I'm saying? This is perhaps one of the reasons why you would even notice on my Facebook, sometimes I'm very dismissive with stupid Christianity, because I don't think that's the objective at the end of the day. And if we can get that right, even as Christians, we will have more people actually listen to our gospel because we are not turning them into cheap entertainment. And that perhaps is one of the saddest things that I have personally witnessed in Christianity. Even when you look at the story, the Gospels of Jesus, anytime Jesus ministered salvation to people, it was just him and his disciples. It was an isolated experience. It was not for public entertainment, but we have turned it in public entertainment. So, it's a back and forth type of thing, and that, unfortunately, is where we fail dismally because Christian entertainment just reinforces flawed beliefs, even amongst us. It reinforces flawed beliefs. Jamie highlighted that you have so many streams of Christianity. You have Baptist, you have Pentecostal. And if a Pentecostal guy proves a Baptist guy wrong, what does that do? It reinforces his pride in his beliefs and vice versa. So when we have more conversations that are really from the heart, we will actually minister the message of grace and salvation stronger to people. And that is genuinely what I believe. And I think where we have failed as Christians. And I say that on this platform, we have failed in that area. That's it.
Right. I'm sorry. We have about 4 minutes left. So this is going to be like the speed round. One last question. Okay. The question for you, Jamie, is do you accept prayer from others and what is that significance?
I do. Actually, your mom has prayed for me before. And so, yes, I do. And I was actually shocked when she did it because right the day after she did it, I got what she prayed for.
Wow.
I got good news. So
yes,
she
don't care.
I do.
You don't care.
So, I mean, like I said, I've said it before and I'll continue to say it. Everybody is free to do their thing. If somebody wants to pray for me, have at it. I make it a point not to say I'll pray for you because I don't pray, but will I keep you in my thoughts? Yes, I will. I don't say I'll pray for you because that I don't, So okay. Yes, if somebody wants to pray for me, have at it, and yes, okay. I will accept it.
This the speed bonus round, but thank you, Jamie. Yeah.
I accept all good wishes. Bring them on.
Okay, Brandon, the same question for you briefly.
Well, let me say this to you. I don't think you have control over who prays for you. The only thing you have control over is who lays hands on you, and you can make a decision there to say, don't lay your hands on me, but you don't know who's praying for you.
Agreed.
You meet a random stranger and a random stranger says, I'm praying for you. How do you stop them? How do you control that? You understand what I'm saying? Of course, each prayer has its own merits that it's, but I think the question for me really is that you don't know who's praying for you. So those are some of those things that you just genuinely have no control over. So you can rise up here and say, I don't allow this one to pray for me, that one to pray for me. And then they text you, they said, I prayed for you tonight. So how do you control that? How on earth do you control that? So I think we need to be comfortable with the things we really have no control over and just journey right along. But you do have control over who lay hands on you. And that is a different conversation altogether, prayer and the laying of hands, two different conversations altogether.
Well, we have definitely covered a lot of ground today. I personally want to thank, my dear friend, Jamie, girl, I love you. And, you my ride or die, so, we got to do another girl trip soon,
yes.
Yay. But, So, thank you so much for coming on.
And Brandon can pray for us on that trip.
Okay. And so Brandon, thank you. My overseas pastor, I'm a church member over there. So, thank you so much for being my, spiritual overseer. And I just, I love you and your wife and the family and the church family. So thank you so much for agreeing to be on today. I appreciate it.
And thank you so much for having me. I think it was an absolute joy. It's the second time speaking to Jamie, and genuinely, I do appreciate the conversation. I'm happy that I've met her, and I think we're probably going to have a lot of conversations offline because there was just so much flowing here today. And I would definitely love to have a chat with Jamie again because, I like a flow, I like a flow. I like your flow, Jamie. There's a good flow there. And as well for you, Kim, and thank you for putting this together. I really appreciate it. It's so good to just come and speak on perspectives without trying to coercing anybody into a certain direction. So thank you for putting this together. I know it came across as, whoa, what's happening here? But I thank you for having the boldness and the courage to put something like this together because this requires boldness, and you exemplify that today.
Agree.
Thank you. Thanks,
both. Kim. Thanks, Brandon.
You're welcome. So I'm going to put you both in the green room, and I'll see you in a few more minutes while I say goodbye to the village. So listen, everyone, this was phenomenal. I just don't even have the words to say what transpired here today. Please watch again. Get more acquainted with both Brandon and Jamie. Please do that. Like it, share it, comment, enjoy, because this was phenomenal. If you have any topics that you're looking for, please drop them in the chat. We're coming back, next season and looking for some different things that you'll be interested in. So I'm getting ready to go. Just remember, silence creates distance, but conversations with Kim builds the village. Bye-bye.
So you don't